Okay, so I believe in our world, many of us are addicted to bliss. Okay, before I was saying that we are addicted to euphoria, but I feel like there's a slight difference, and I believe we're addicted to bliss. Like I would even almost say like euphoria, bliss is almost like total euphoria. It's like this higher frequency euphoria, but we're addicted to bliss. um, in our world, and it's causing all of these detrimental things. I feel like the issue of being addicted with bliss, it just makes us really inactive. Okay, not just inactive, but inactive and like miserable conditions. Because what has happened is, well, like the first thing is, it's like, um, it seems like we're maintaining miserable conditions and circumstances because that is maximizing our our bliss, right? It's almost like standing in the hot sweltering sun before going into a air conditioned room. Or it's almost like, have you never there's those things where are that time where we don't drink water for a long time, and when we get that drink of water, it's like, oh, it just takes the water to the next level, right? We're kind of, making ourselves, dehydrated and thirsty in a sense to have that sort of intensity, right? We're sort of subconsciously maintaining these miserable conditions and circumstances because it's going to maximize or make more intense that bliss. But it's not just that. That would be one thing, but it's like we're addicted to this sort of insta bliss, right? Um, where our sort of whole society has been engineered and structured for that. From schools where we get grades, right? Or we're constantly being praised. It's like, or birthdays, or all these different millions of parties and celebrations that we partake in. It's like we're constantly being showered with praise and validation. But it's like this superficial, vapid, instantaneous, you know, bliss, right? And that's bliss. When we're getting praise, showered with this praise and validation, it sort of triggers or initiates that blissful state. And it has this sort of, material, physiological, almost psychic effect, right? Where we're just in like in this blissed out state, like type of thing. Like almost being addicted to our own hormones in a way too. But it's like this, it's like the meth of bliss that we created, right? But then also like social media took it to the next level, right? Because before we had like award shows and then like Olympic gold medals, and we're living through these people, we're using them as avatars, so we're kind of getting that sort of glory and praise and validation from that as well. But then when social media arose, it's like um, collecting friends and the likes, right? The views. It's like this instant, concentrated bliss. So we're all sort of blissed out, right? We're not sleepwalking, we're bliss walking. But we engineer um, and maintain miserable circumstances and conditions to get even harder hits to maximize it in that sort of dehydrating yourself to make that water drinking more intense. Okay, which is why we actually crave or desire these miserable conditions that we're in, right? It's like this totally polarized experience that we're kind of flipping back and forth from. But we don't want to let go of either one. We don't want to let go of the miserable state because it maximizes um, that blissful state. But we don't want to leave this blissful state because we don't want to experience that miserable state and we're addicted to that bliss. It's like this really toxic cycle that we're in, but it almost like a group of people decided, how can we make this the most addictive bliss? How can we make this the most toxic cycle possible? And because that's what we did, right? With, you know, this constant praise about this vapid, superficial, synthetic, high intensity, instantaneous, constant praise, glorification, and validation. From shopping to eating out to increasing it to make it novel, right? These novel foods and novel experiences. And it's like more and more and more and more and more and more and more. But it's like this sort of polarized, like a pendulum swinging back and forth to extremes. That's what we're in right now. Like this, our societies, this way of life makes us so miserable. It's like we're constantly whining and agony, agony, but we also don't do anything to change it. It's like we want it both ways. It's like, uh, I would rather um, have something, you know, placid than this, right? Um, right. So like I have family members that I don't really see anymore because it was like the best, like family, right? The best. But then it was also those toxic aspects of family. You know what I'm talking about. Um, the most toxic things. It was like there was no in between. It was just like the best ever and the most toxic ever. But I broke away from those family members because it's like, uh, even though that best was like the best, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it for those worst moments, those toxic moments. So I just basically divorced myself from family, my family, right? Family members. Because I would rather have that worst wasn't worth that best. And that's what we're in right now. I don't want this. Like, what is it? It's almost like this we live in this devil's carnival right now, right? Where it's like a 24/7 party we're in. And we have all these sort of insta bliss um, um, access or things to do, right? Like you can even see where we're kind of high and addicted, where we're like people using buzzwords. We're even addicted to buzzwords because it's just like it activates that sort of herd euphoria, right? Where it feels so good to be in a herd and to fit in. We gather around these popular words and concepts like a fireball, like because it gives us that insta bliss. So you see people saying like these different buzzwords, like where it doesn't even make sense anymore. It's like so um, nonsensical. Like how we all have these like 5,000 different identities. But it's not really about the identities anymore. It's not about making sense of reality. It's not about self discovery. It's about that they're buzzwords and it gets us this insta hit of insta bliss. We're addicted to insta bliss. right? Glory used to be earned, praise used to be earned, validation used to be earned, or you didn't really need it. You self validated. You just used your sense to say, oh, hey, I grew or I evolved or, I accomplished this or that. But now it's all been externalized. Like you don't feel validated. You feel totally insecure if you're not bathed in constant validation. And it's like that basic form of it doesn't it's not enough anymore. We have to be miserable, right? It's that water, it's that food. If you've been starving, anything tastes delicious, it's just transcendent. But now we totally starve ourselves and then we eat the most decadent food, no in between. Where it's just like, mm. So we can have that transcendent bliss type of experience. But then that's not even enough. That's why things are becoming so odd and weird because we need harder hits. It's like TV is becoming more and more extreme, more and more novel, more and more weird. They're trying to make everything more novel and weird and intense because nothing's clicking, nothing's hitting like it used to. Like, I just feel like the solution is we need to get out of this overactive society. It's so overactive, it's so overstimulating. There's so many options, there's so many choices, but they're always so empty and vapid and substanceless. It just catered to that insta, easily digestible, very no zero friction, no challenge, no conflict, no confrontation type of thing because that interferes with this hyper insta bliss thing we got going on. Okay, this and it's all fueled by this sort of competitive society. Like you don't have to do anything. Like you can be just a couch potato, but you feel like you accomplish and see so much because the video game told us so, and that superhero movie told us so, and that politician told us so, and that clergy told us so. They told us that we're perfect angels, this and good, and we can do this and that, and just apologize, and that's okay, and this and that. It's like we're living these green lighted, hyper hedonistic lifestyles, but in this sort of synthetic, robotic way, and it's very scary. And to the point where we're bliss walking so hard, it's like our societies are crumbling all around us. The climate is shifting. There's about to be these rapid changes, and we're unprepared for it. And we don't even care because we need our bliss hits. Hmm. Like we need to shift to a more, I believe, more cooperative instead of competitive society, and a more you know I wouldn't say sustenance based, but more with this higher standard of living, and more character based society. Like a lot of us don't even it's more about objects and accumulation and wealth and badges and points instead of what that person as a character is, right? And then a more ecocentric um, society, which is not just environmental. Eco means home. Like we don't, so that's focusing more on our you know community and our environment, our cities, um, the welfare of people and our citizens, and just more eco-aware, because that's we don't have any more checks and balances. We don't have any more boundaries or limits. We are living this sort of limitless in all ways societies, but that's not natural. Even like the ecosystem has these natural checks and balances. All we have to do is sort of follow them. Like how there's finite resources, we don't act like there's finite resources, all just to feel this bliss, um, addiction, and the personas that cloak us from the consequences from this sort of bliss addiction.